for mayor in 1994, and he ran every 4 years till finally he was elected in 2014. I worked on every one of his campaigns, and his slogan was that as Newark goes, so goes the nation. The conditions that I saw in Newark, in the streets, in the projects, are the same conditions that I see in the streets around these neighborhoods in District 8. And I believe the same principles apply. As South Central goes, as District 8 goes, so goes the nation. There are private developers, there are for-profit interests that want to take control of every square inch of this property between downtown and the airport. And you can draw a direct line of all of the money development that's being put into this area between now and the Olympics in 2028. None of that is designed to benefit the interests of the people that have historically lived here. If we don't take matters into our own hands, pretty soon this place is going to be a place that none of us are going to recognize, that none of us are going to be able to afford to live in, that none of us are going to be welcome to live in. Jahan mentioned the mall. There was a coalition of community activists that tried to put up money, over $100 million, to purchase that mall, and they were denied the opportunity to because the people that run these policies, they don't want the community to have any property. They don't want the community to have any stake. They shut down the Afiba Center. They shut down the Nipsey's Marathon location. They shut down all the stores, the mom and pop shops in Leimert Park. I know, 2 minutes. It's a big question. Thank you. I hope we can continue it.
No problem. Jahan, same question. What institutional and societal changes do you feel need to be made in this district?
I think one of the most important things, and I'm going to, put some onus on us as community members to be a little more involved. And I say that because our population is 252,000 in this district. Out of that, 7,680 more involvement, and to be able to hold our politicians' feet to the fire to do what we need them to do. And the same, if they don't do what we need them to do, we need to years and we need more things like this. So I'm thankful for everybody that came, thankful to Cliff, and would like to see a bigger crowd next time we do something like this so they can come and find out, because we are the people who are going to be making policy and budget decisions for this neighborhood, and people should want to know who we are, what we do, what we stand for, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the change that I would make overall.
Jahan, explain your understanding of the role of a city council member in promoting economical development.
Well, city council, we determine the laws and we make the budget for the different departments, all departments in the city of Los Angeles. Also, a lot of things has to go through the council member's office. One of the things that sparked me wanting to run is I was trying to get a hold of a piece of property that had been sitting empty, dilapidated for years. Homeless people have built encampments in there, and basically I had to go through the councilman's office to try to, get anything done. And I noticed that a lot of, developers that are necessarily not from here don't seem to have the same problem that people from here seem to have to get their foot in the door, make a development, or reach the councilman. So I think just one, being reachable, him having a genuine effort, interest into grants and everything else, as far as just being there and present, being an advocate for the community, I think would be very helpful for economic empowerment's sake.
Cliff, explain your understanding of the role of a city council member in promoting economical development.
The council member's role, first and foremost, has to be to represent the interests of the members of our community, instead of representing the interests of the people that are trying to take control of this community away from us. And this is our biggest issue with the current administration, is that they're handing this district over block by block to private for-profit interests. There can be no way that we can allow our neighborhoods to be handed over to developers that only want to turn this into a playground for rich people to fly in from all around the world, have a party here, go to a concert, and then leave out and take their money with them. All the development that takes place in District 8 has to first and foremost benefit the residents of District 8. If the development is not going to benefit the members of our community, then the development should not be allowed to happen. And whatever we need to do to make sure that that happens, we need to make sure that we do it, because the person that's representing us now is not making our interests his priority.
Cliff, this one's for you. How would you ensure that the needs of all citizens are represented on the city council?
We engage the community. We engage them not just when it's an election cycle. Like too often, as Jahan just explained, this is the only time we ever see these people is when they want to come out, hand out some turkeys at Thanksgiving, and ask for your vote. We engage the community daily. We engage them on all the issues that affect us, whether it's police brutality, whether it's housing, whether it's voting. I talked about shutting down all the motels on Figueroa and on Western where all the prostitution is taking place. All of those properties could be developed immediately into transitional housing. The city says that there's not enough available housing. This type of activity goes on day after day after day, and I don't know where's the councilman. I don't know what streets he drives up and down. My kids have to go to school every day and walk past the Snooty Fox and these motels. They're 10 and 8 and 5 years old. They should not have to be exposed to these types of conditions, and it doesn't take place in other parts of the city. There's no reason why we should have to live in these conditions. And we need to hold, as Jahan said, our council member accountable. And if he's not willing to be held accountable, then he needs to be ran out. And we need to do what we need to do to make sure that that happens.
Jahan? Question. Excuse me. How would you ensure that the needs of all citizens are represented on the city council?
Yeah, one and first and foremost is knowing what those needs are, and it goes back to accessibility and really being present. For me, I suspect that a lot of council members don't live where they say they live, because if all of the street lights were out and I drive straight to the street and I see all the street lights are out on my way to work, hey Jim, the street lights are out down the street. Can you do something about it? And so for street lights and trash and things of the sort to be there for a long period of time leads me to believe that either they don't care or they're not seeing it until one of us reports it. And, you know, you're supposed to live in the district that you're running in. So I suspect that we don't have as many people living here, let alone interacting, being around. Like Cliff said, my opponent, a lot of times we don't see these people until an election cycle. All of a sudden, street lights are getting fixed. All of a sudden, trash is getting picked up. All of a sudden, we got construction going on in the streets every other week. Nipsey Center been closed for 3 years. Guess what? It's election year is getting opened back up. You know, so a lot of things that we are seeing take place and are happening, I think is, you know, pandering. I think it's only because something is happening. But if you stay grounded and connected to the community that you claim to love, I think you being an advocate for the community and for the district is going to come naturally.
I'm going to move on to education and some after-school questions. School shootings have unfortunately become commonplace in this day and age. What would you do to protect the students during and even after school? Jahan?
School shootings, that is a tough one. I do think we've had police officers at schools for long, at least as long as I've been there. We've had school police. I'm not sure what their level of, you know, authority and their power are, and I'm not sure how many school shootings we have had in this area as of late. I don't know if it's the biggest problem in our district per se, but I would, you know, continue with the armed police officers on school campuses for whatever may come, and just to make sure that the people that are on the campus are supposed to be there. You know, there's already people. I go to Crenshaw High. I've been to Crenshaw High recently, which is the public school in our district, and there are people at the gates coming when you come in and go out. So there would be some advance notice. And And other than that, we already are pretty restricted as far as gun and carrying guns are concerned, at least in this city. So just making sure that we have enough security at these different schools just in case something was to happen, that it could be responded to properly in a proper amount of time.
Cliff, you want me to repeat?
I was an employee of Los Angeles Unified School District for 7 years before I got elected into my union position. And so I can tell you that I have a great deal of confidence in the security at LAUSD, who's allowed on campus and who's not. I don't support armed police in the schools, not because I'm not concerned about preventing school shootings, but because we have seen time and time again that the behavior of the police when they're in schools in these communities is like the same behavior as an occupying force that we see out in the streets in the neighborhoods. They don't treat the children with care. They don't try to de-escalate. We've seen videos upon videos of police brutalizing young children, and I think that's not something that we want to encourage. I think that the epidemic of school shootings in this country, we don't see this in other places around the world, is not because our children are more violent. It's because of the conditions that we live in. We have to address the source of these problems if we want to solve the problems. If we want the police to come and be the solution to the problems of violence and the causes and conditions that create the violence, all we're doing is inviting more abuse and violence into our communities. Ultimately, the police don't prevent crime. It's the conditions of the community that have to benefit the community that prevent crime in our communities.
Question for Cliff. If you were to receive a $10 million grant for after-school programs as well as regular school, what would you do with the grant?
I would open up music and theater and dance and sports and arts and cultural programs for not just the youth, but for continuing education and the elders. Do you know that as of at least last year, there's no Little League program in District 8? Raul Claros, the president of the Latino Coalition, tried to put a Little League baseball program together after the pandemic ended. My daughters played in it for a season at MLK Park. And because the current councilman in this district would not support it, Raul had to bring his league across the highway and put it into the 9th district. Didn't Darryl Strawberry go to Crenshaw? Didn't Eric Davis go to Fremont? Are there not talented young people that come out of our neighborhoods that if they had opportunities and recreation and cultural programs to plug their energies into, if they had opportunities and job training, that instead of finding themselves in trouble or doing things that they don't need to be doing, that we could be uplifting this entire community? Ah, boy, imagine what would we all do if somebody put $10 million? I would love to hear from everybody else's ideas what we could do with those types of resources if somebody would invest those into these neighborhoods.
Jahan, what would you do if you received a $10 million grant for after-school programs as well as during school?
Definitely music and things of the sort, but most importantly to me is trade training again, where you could graduate from high school and graduate with a trade or be instantly ready for the workforce. We do have a mixed bag when it comes to college, attendees and non. And my concern, even going to being up at Crenshaw this past year, a lot of the kids are 18, 19. They're going to be out here in the world in 6 months, and if they are not on their way to college, all that's left for them is hanging out every day or taking a minimum wage job where they can't afford to live on their own out here, right? And so that's been a big focus of mine, even as of late, to try to identify these kids and know what they're going to be doing in 6 months, because I don't want to walk out one day outside one day and see those same kids that I was just tutoring hanging out every day. So I think to reestablish trade programs, and the city has a lot of unfulfilled. I think they said 1 out of 6 cities, it's like 44% of the city jobs are unfilled. I would like to train some of the high school kids to be able to take those jobs coming out of high school so they instantly become productive citizens and can afford to live here and all of the things that come along with it.
Question for Jahan. Moving on to another topic. How would you approach budgeting for the city service and programs?
City services.
Yes.
When you say how would I budget for it, how because there is a budget. I've looked over the budget. How would I rebudget things? How would I redistribute?
Yes.
Well, right now, police and fire get a good part of our budget. I think police are like 44% of our overall budget, and that's something about $2 billion annually. So we did talk. There has been conversation about using some of those funds. On the term they say defund the police, but it more so means to spend those, not having the police have to respond to everything, right? For now, even instantly, they are overworked. They have to respond to a lot of the homeless crisis, which includes people who are drug addicted and mentally ill, and just have to step out of their realm to deal with things that are not necessarily in their training. So some of the budget that I would change would be more to mental health services, drug addiction, really financing. I would like to see more homeowners around here, and that comes with educational programming and just access to financing. So those are some things that I would like to re-budget for, to make more programs to help with financing for home and business.
Cliff, how would you approach budgeting for the city services and programs?
Well, first of all, the budget, the source of the budget, needs to come from the wealthy, the people that take the money out of our communities. They're the ones that hold all of the purse strings. They need to be forced by the powers of the city government. If they want to set up shop in Los Angeles, the second largest city in the country, they need to pay the price. California has the 5th largest economy in the world. These corporations have a gold mine here in Los Angeles. They don't contribute. We pay the taxes, homeowners, renters through their rent, and then we have to chop that budget up so that the parks get a little bit of money over here, or people in need of housing get a little bit of money over here. And then, like Jahan said, the police department gets over 50% of the discretionary budget. Do they really need to spend thousands of dollars an hour to fly the helicopters over our heads? The budgeting needs to be in the control of the community. Right now, the people that are in city council, 5 of them are either indicted or convicted because they're in the pockets of the developers, they're corrupt, and they're compromised. These people are not taking our city resources and putting them to work for the community. We need to have not just an individual candidate, but an entire citywide political organization that represents working and oppressed people across the city. We need to build coalitions and a united front so that we can attack our enemies.
Question for Cliff. How would you plan to involve residents in the decision-making of our district?
We need to 3-4 times a week. But I don't see any independent community leaders that are out. Organizing is hard work. But if we don't organize ourselves, we're at the mercy, because nobody is going to solve our problems for us. Nobody is going to solve our problems for us. We need to come together and do the hard organizing work to bring our communities together, and everybody has a role to play in it. The young people have energy, and the elders have wisdom, and we need all of us to be part of solving our problems.
Jahan, how do you plan on involving residents in the decision-making of this district?
I would say events like this. One thing that I have been able to do since my campaign are town halls and things of the sort, where the community can come in, give their opinion, and I can hear straight from them. That seems to be a very powerful tool that I've been able to utilize, and it's actually given me a lot of experience and insight to certain issues that I haven't had dealings with, or maybe don't understand the totality of the problem. So stuff like this and engaging the community and creating a space for them to be able to come and list their problems, I think is very important. I don't know of any town halls that we've had in this district over the years. I don't know of any debates that we've had or any. They literally they don't come and address us until it's a political year, until it's time for voting or running. But other than that, I think we should have maybe a state of the district address, and I think we should have, quarterly or biannual town halls for people to be able to discuss or voice what's going on in the community, and us as the politicians be able to react and respond to it.
Question for Jahan. How do you stay informed about current events and issues affecting the city?
News outlets, social media, those would be the main two ways. News, grassroots, of course. There's a couple around here that are good on social media. Slauson Girls, one that I follow, Sentinel at times. So yeah, usually newspaper and just staying grounded. But because I do stay here, I feel like I'm pretty connected to the things that may fall apart and not be going right around here.
Cliff? How do you stay informed about current events and issues affecting the city?
I've made it my business to be active in the community wherever I'm at through my entire adult life, and I've managed to develop a strong network of active community members and leaders, and we share information and experiences. Sometimes we disagree with each other, but we keep ourselves informed. There's really not too much that goes on that is important to the community that doesn't quickly pass from word of mouth. Aside from that, as the business manager of my union, I have an official responsibility to be informed about all of the political, economic, and social developments across the city. I'm frequently participating in meetings of city commissions, planning meetings, and these sort of things, negotiating project labor agreements for construction developments. So, I have different angles that keep me informed about what goes on.
Question for Cliff. This is probably going to take you both a second to answer this one. Describe a time when you had to balance conflicting opinions while making a decision.
I've been married for 10 years. We have 3 children. Yeah, so I don't know that there's really a moment that goes by that I don't have to balance conflicting opinions. I'm glad we can laugh. I'm finding some, just also being the elected business manager of my union. I represent 1,000 members and their families, and their futures and well-beings, and they didn't all vote for me. They don't all agree with my opinions on things or my priorities, and I have to hear them out. Whether they just are there to throw eggs at me or not, I have to give them the respect. If I didn't pay attention and respect their opinions as well as the opinions of my family, I wouldn't be long for the position that I'm in. I wouldn't be long for my home. So I think that's an important skill that I have to work on it. It's nothing that just comes natural, and probably I make a lot of mistakes, but it's important to respect people's opinions, especially when they don't agree with you.
Jahan, describe a time when you had to balance conflicting opinions while making a decision.
Well, believe it or not, I would say being in a leadership position, which I have at plenty of times in life, that's a natural part of it. You're always going to have, people that are on one side. You're always going to have people on the other. You're never or rarely going to have 100% of people agree on everything. And so you have to find a balance in that and give an answer. But as a real estate broker, and particularly one that deals with probates, and somebody passes on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 brothers and sisters, it's usually some type of conflict, and I always have to work through that conflict in order to close the transaction. Everybody always knows what their mother is rolling over in the grave about, or oh, my mom would be rolling over in the grave if she knew, that scenario. So everybody has very strong and passionate opinions in those moments, and so we are usually able to find a middle ground and complete those transactions. But I do have experience with that, if nothing else, from dealing with my real estate business.
I'm going to ask you last few questions are about housing and homeless crisis. It is not illegal to be homeless in the city, and the city cannot force someone to move due to constitutional protections and court rulings. But what would you do about homeless encampments and parked RVs in our local communities? Jahan?
This is an interesting and good question, and I'm glad you asked it. So there's a lot that could and should be done, and I promise not to tell or release all of my sources, because I was able to have some contacts and they did not want to be identified. But at least as far as the police are concerned, there was a city moratorium on towing vehicles away right now. They did put signs up that you can tow away, but that these are tow away zones if the vehicles are large enough between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. But even there's a moratorium on that right now. And from what I've been told, only the council office can approve those parking enforcements for that moratorium to be over and those parking enforcements to be enforced again. Also, there is the parking enforcement. Not the police are the ones who have the power to, do most of the towing, and that comes from the chief administrative office. But again, right now, they have been told to not tow and not removed for the time being, and those orders seem to be coming from the city council office, and it seems they have the most power when it comes to making sure those ordinances are followed. So right now, as far as the police is concerned, according to them, the only thing they can really do if they have homeless or people on the sidewalk is cite them, and the citation is 41.18, which is blocking the sidewalk. They can give them a warning, but there's pretty much not much they can do, and a lot of them feel like their hands are pretty tied when it comes to trying to, clear the homeless or the unsheltered situation. So I think the first thing that has to be done, the council office has to work a little more directly with the police and with the homeless services to make sure that we are systematically getting people the help they need and get them off the street.
Cliff? What would you do about homeless encampments and RVs parked in our community?
Well, I would say that, first of all, we have to ensure the safety of young people and our children. And so there has to be a space, a distance from schools and daycare. But having said that, we need to address the source and the cause of the cost of housing and the availability of housing. The overwhelming reason why people are being pushed out of their houses onto the streets and into these encampments is because they can't afford the escalating housing prices. And until the city gets serious about housing, affordability, and availability, this problem is only going to continue, and it's only going to continue to get worse. When there was a fire under the 10 freeway, the mayor declared an emergency and marshaled resources from the state and from the federal government to make sure that before Thanksgiving, that freeway was up and running again. When there was a pandemic, they declared an emergency, a crisis, and they marshaled resources to make sure that essential workers had what we needed, to make sure that the economy continued. When there's a will and an intention to solve a problem, the problem gets solved. The reason why there's people sleeping on our streets is not because primarily they are not able to maintain a house. It's because they cannot afford the cost. And this is a policy decision. This is something that's engineered and designed. They don't want us in this district. They want us in Temecula or Palmdale or Lancaster. They're pushing people out on purpose. So, of course, we don't want to see the debris. We don't want to see all of that. Of course, we don't want to see it. And it's easy to say, Just bring in the bulldozers, move them out. When the Olympics are here, we want everything to be shiny and glittery for the television. But that's not going to solve the problem. And if we're going to be serious about it, we have to get to the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is that housing and development is a for-profit economy, and it's not designed to solve people's problems. Housing is a human right, like education, like healthcare is a human right. This is something that we need to fight for. And again, nobody else is going to solve these problems for us.
As I said before, I'm born and raised in this community. And recently, myself, just recently married, me and my wife have found out how hard and how expensive it is to afford homes, and let alone rent in the district that I grew up in. If you are elected, what kind of help would you give the people of the community that don't want to leave but really don't have much of a choice? Cliff?
We used to build public housing in this country. We haven't built public housing in Los Angeles in decades. This is something that the federal government needs to be forced to do. The wealthy people, the capitalists, the ruling class in the United States, they want to have Los Angeles here for their entertainment, but they don't want to deal with the people that live and work and make this whole thing operate. We need to force the elected leaders from the city government and the state government and the federal government to build public housing, not for-profit housing. As long as the housing is for-profit, it's going to be market rate and unaffordable. We need housing for low-income people. When they talk about affordable housing, they're not talking about what people in District 8 incomes can afford. They're talking about the county median average income. That's what they call affordable. The technical use of that term in housing is out of reach for the average person in District 8 in these neighborhoods. But they drop this word on us to make us think that something is being done to build affordable housing. What is affordable for their use of the term is out of reach for the people that live in this district. The only way that we're going to be able to bring to bear the political will and the economic resources to solve these problems, to provide housing for us, is to make Los Angeles unavailable for what they want it to do. We need to use the leverage that we have. This is the rule of organizing. You have to target your enemy and find out their pressure points and leverage them. If the wealthy people want to use Los Angeles as their playground, we need to force them to provide for our needs.
John, if you were elected, what would you do to help the people of a community that don't want to leave but don't have much of a choice?
I think our biggest problem, more so than inventory, is financing. I don't think the financing is available for the community to do a lot of these things, whether you're going for financing for a business or financing for a home. Nobody really walks in with confidence, and I think that is, the biggest issue, that literally the financing is not there. Most renters and rent around here is higher than mortgages. They always tell you that if renting, that you're probably paying your landlord's mortgage off, and when you rent, all it's going to do over time, rent is going to continue to go up, right? As time goes up, as the economy gets bigger, and rent is going to get higher. The only thing that goes down over time is the mortgage, right? So there's the education factor that needs to happen there, so we can turn more renters into homeowners, and then the financing needs to be there. There's been a couple of banks recently that have been caught in scandals. Navy Federal Credit, Wells Fargo, basically for housing and lending discrimination. And that's a huge ongoing problem with just lending discrimination. So that's where I would tackle and pressure. I mean, we've had banks here. We've had Bank of America on 57th and Crenshaw, U.S. Bank on Slauson and Crenshaw, Wells Fargo. And I know a lot of people put their deposits in those banks, but are those same banks giving mortgages and giving loans to the people in the community? I would like to compare how much community money and deposits they have versus how many home loans they're giving out in those same communities, you know?
This will be the last question from myself. As you know, minimum wage is roughly around $16 an hour. Fast food minimum wage goes up to $20 an hour. This actually goes back to your opening of raising minimum wage to $25 an hour. On the news, you've noticed a lot of mom and pop businesses have to close down because they can't afford the prices of minimum wage. If you were elected, what would you do, Jahan, to help the people and help the businesses be able to afford the higher minimum wage without making their products go up?
I think that, again, that goes back to financing that would allow them to afford their employees and their overhead while they're trying to scale up, right? Because scaling up would allow them to afford most of those things. Unfortunately, we have no cushion. A lot of business owners, it's all coming out of their pocket, right? If you can't get a business loan, you have to decide between, am I going to get something my business needs this month, or am I going to pay my rent, or I'm going to buy the groceries, or my kid has this. So I think the biggest, where we suffer the most, and it's going to reverberate through a lot of different problems, is we just simply, and it's been like that for a long time, do not have the same access to financing. I know too many people that have hard money loans when they should probably have regular FHA, et cetera loans, just because that was the only way for them to get their foot in the door, you know. So I think access to financing, specifically in this community, would solve a lot of the issues that we are having.
Cliff, you want to repeat the question?
Please.
The question was, with minimum wage going up and up and up, what would you do to help mom and pop small businesses, as they are called, stay afloat without having to close their doors instead of paying their workers?
Well, I would say that minimum wage relative to the cost of living actually is going down and down and down. And it has been since Ronald Reagan was president. And this is the problem that we're trying to address when we say it needs to be $25 an hour minimum in the city of Los Angeles. That's just to catch up. The one positive thing that Rick Caruso contributed by running for mayor is he published on his campaign website that the average cost of living, the average apartment cost, requires you to make $39 an hour just to pay for your housing. So if you have 1.5 incomes in your household, $25 an hour minimum, you can pay the rent and barely make ends meet. The cost of living is going up regardless, whether it's gasoline or milk and eggs or housing. The cost of living is going up. Wages have to go up to keep pace with it. Otherwise, we're just getting squeezed. And people are leaving California. It was reported in the news about 2 weeks ago that people are leaving California because of the cost of living in this state. If small businesses can't afford to pay their workers, first of all, when push comes to shove, I'm a labor leader. I'm going to take the side of any worker. I support small businesses against the multinational monopoly corporations, but those corporations get all kinds of incentives and tax breaks to be able to open up their businesses in Los Angeles and other places. Small businesses can get incentives and tax breaks, and the wealthy corporations can pick up the difference. Workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs should not be the ones that have to bear the burden of the economic problems that are created by the people that are in power.
That is all questions for me, so now we will have questions from the audience.
Well, before we get into the question section and everything, everybody give both candidates a round of applause, please. That was amazing. Powerful, powerful. Also give a round of applause to Bobo, the moderator. So as we get into the questions and the answers, I'm just gonna turn it down just a little bit. Yeah, okay. As we get into the questions and answers, I'm just gonna read out the rules and regulations on how we're gonna go through them. So the moderator will select 10 questions from the box that's going around right now, randomly. So please, if you have enrolled questions on something and put it in the box, please write out the best question you can write. We heard, I know, we heard a lot of amazing things already. Both candidates has answered every great question that Bobo had written out magnificently. But if you got any other questions, write it out, whatever it is. Let's get it in the box, and your question will get read. All right. So candidates will be given 1 minute each to respond to each question that is read. Extra time for rebuttals will not be granted. So no extra time, just a minute. However, if the candidate would like to use a portion of their 1 minute of time for the next question to rebuttal their opponent, they may do so after the question have been asked, but will not be granted time over 1 minute. So as the box go around, everybody continue to write down your questions and everything. Again, let's give them a round of applause. They're doing an amazing job. It is not easy to do what Cliff and Jahan is doing right now. Both amazing, well speakers, and they're doing a great job. We're still going around, getting some more. All right. I'm like, can I get me a question up in the box? I'm like, I'm going to get a question
I can
too.
pick one now to get it going. Just
All right,
randomly.
so we'll get the questions read.
Okay.
All right.
You answered it, so question will be for Jahan first. No, sorry, it'd be Cliff first. Over time, the community has declined. There is trash in the streets, prostitution, and streets where the police do not respond. What do you believe is what do you believe is the change the community needs?
We need to get organized. We need to take matters into our own hands. And again, I want to return to the issue about these motels. The prostitution that takes place would not be out in the open if these motels were shut down. And these motels don't exist in other parts of the city. When the city wants to build a baseball stadium or run a freeway, they use the power of eminent domain, and they take neighborhoods away from people, and then they build up something that they say benefits the community. All of these motels could be immediately seized through eminent domain authority. They could pay fair market value to the owners of those properties and then put them to use. They could build women's shelters and provide services and programs to help people get on their feet. They could build immediate transitional housing for people. Those motels are already housing units. Hundreds and hundreds of them up and down Western and Figueroa. There's just not the will. There's not the interest. This district and these neighborhoods is neglected on purpose. They do not want people to feel comfortable, to enjoy their lives in District 8. They want us to feel uncomfortable and to leave so that they can take control over the property and then put it to use for their interests.
Jahan? Question. Over time, the community has declined. There is trash in the streets, prostitution, and streets where police do not respond. What do you believe is the change the community needs?
I think over time, part of the community has become disenfranchised, and they don't feel like government is for them. So we definitely want to bring those people back into the fold and, create more of a pride of ownership and a pride of neighborhood. Also, get the police to stop turning a blind eye to certain things. And I'm not picking on the police, but what I'm saying is if you are Cliff's daughter or anybody else can drive down the street and realize there's prostitution going on, then I'm sure the police can identify that as well, And if it was any other crime or any other thing like that, they would stop and break it up. Heck, they'll stop and break up a group of teenagers hanging out on the corner. So that type of scenario, they can definitely be approached. They can definitely be figured out, and the law can be enforced. And if young women are being sex trafficked or done harm to, then we want to catch them and actually stop that process, not continue to drive by and ignore it and just, wait around. So I would get the community more involved and then ask the police to enforce the laws and regulations that are already there.
Jahan, question, you start off. What is the singular issue most impacting the black community of of District 8, specifically the Crenshaw District, what areas of District 8 do you live in?
Um, I live in, I guess it would Canterbury Knolls, slash Chesterfield Square, right by the borderline. So I've been there most of my life. Prior to that, pretty much Chesterfield Square. Chesterfield Square and Canterbury Knoll, they're right next to each other. I'm off of Van Ness. So what was the other question about whether other than where I live?
What is the singular issue most impacting the black community of District 8, specifically the Crenshaw District?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to financing and ownership. We don't have enough ownership around here. And that's not only including the commercial buildings, but the homes in themselves, and we're not getting more of it, we're losing more of it. Like they said, there are a lot of buildings that are being bought out by, foreign forces or foreign entities, and they are keeping these homes empty or these commercial buildings empty. Drive down Florence, drive down Manchester, drive down Western, and count the amount of boarded up commercial buildings there.
Cliff? What area of District 8 do you live in, and what is the singular issue most impacting the black community of District 8, specifically the Crenshaw District?
I live up the street on 41st. The single most important issue from my point of view is the rising threat of fascism and white supremacy being led by Donald Trump and the leaders of the Republican Party, and the fact that the opposition in the Democratic Party is not doing the work that needs to be done to defeat Donald Trump. I don't have any confidence in the Democratic Party from District 8 to the mayor to the governor to the president to solve our problems. They're all compromised. We need to build our own political organization for working class and oppressed people in this neighborhood, on this block and on the next block, and across the city and across the state and across the country. We need to build a political organization that represents the interests of working class people without compromise.
Okay, one question for Cliff. What will we do about the young spot, I'm sorry. What will we do about the young spotsters, I'm reading this the best I can, and high school future scholars who deal with hate and envy, facing losing their lives like the talented Quincy Reyes Jr.
I'm going to ask Jahan, this is the young man that was the football player at Crenshaw and got killed on basketball player on 77th and Western, and that's tragic. And, it's too many of our young people, and I salute Jahan for the involvement in honoring this young man's life. And it's too many young people in our communities that are falling victim to senseless violence. Every high school graduate in the city of Los Angeles should be able to go to college with no tuition, with no student debt. All the student debt should be forgiven and abolished. If you graduate from high school in this city, you should be able to go into any college in the area. I'm talking about USC. If they want to keep taking over block after block after block of our neighborhoods, they should have to give back to this community. The young people in these neighborhoods should be able to look forward to growing old. They shouldn't have to think that life is hopeless and worthless and to just throw it all away on a street corner.
John, now that I realize it says young sports stars, what will you do about the young sports stars and high school future scholars who deal with the hate and envy, facing losing their lives like the talented Quincy Reyes Jr.?
That's a personal question, only because I knew Quincy Reyes Jr. I actually had the opportunity to coach him and train him in basketball prior to all of this happening, so it was very personal for me. It's the first time I've actually lost. Growing up here, I went to high school with Bobo as well, but we've seen people that passed away that was close to our age group, like growing up. If I was 16, this person was 16, et cetera, et cetera. But Quincy's the first person that I've had interaction with that I've lost that was younger than me, that I was training. So it does hit a little different. And I think part of the reason why things are like they are is because we really don't have much school programming. And even when I'm at some of the schools, the demeanor is for the kids to get out after school is over, and they start locking up doors, locking up bathrooms. It's not a safe space, for they don't even want the kids to hang out for after school because there's really not much after school programming, you know? And so I think having more involvement, because right now in the inner city, sports is all that's really pushed for. You know, like we don't put the same energy in athletic decathlon. We don't put the same energy in the instruments or anything like that. So I think putting more energy into other after-school programs, making to where all of the kids feel like they have a future and that all of the community is behind them, whether they can dribble a basketball or not, will maybe make them feel a little more involved. And, you know, I would think it would curb a little more of the hate, you know, if that, as far as the question was asked, you know. If you have something going on positive in your life, you're less likely to hate on somebody else who doesn't have, you know.
The question was actually written for Cliff, so I'm going to let Cliff answer, then come back to you. Cliff, why do you think a person who crossed the border last week should be able to vote?
Because it makes our community stronger. If you try to divide our communities against each other, you weaken all of us against our common enemies. And this is the age-old rule of divide and conquer. They want you to fight against your next-door neighbor or the person that lives across the street from you, or the example of the young brother that we was just speaking about. Like Nipsey Hussle said that they want you to go and hunt yourself on the other side of town. They want to put a poison seed in your brain that hardworking person across the street from you is your enemy, while these people take everything that you have. All of us needs to be involved in the political process, and we have so little political power right now as it is. To try to talk about weakening the power that we do have is insane. If we don't come together in mutual self-defense and understand that my fight and your fight are against the same people, that an injury to one is an injury to all, we're never, ever going to be able to move forward. We are all, at the end of the day, dealing with the same problems, not in the same way, but with the same problems against the same enemies.
Jahan, why do you think a person who crossed the border last week should be able to vote?
I don't. And I say that simply because, and not to create a divide or anything of the sort, but if I was to go into another country, any country, Turkey, randomly, I don't know their culture. I don't know their rules. I haven't earned that right. Voting is a privilege that is just, you know, it's a birthright, but it's earned in being here and understanding what the community is about, right? And so would I want my votes overshadowed or overpowered when I've been here for a long period of time by a group of folks, whatever the race, that just came in a week ago? Absolutely not. It starts to corrode at, you know, our power and what we're able to accomplish. And not to say that they should never get the right to vote, but there should be some process of bringing them into the fold and giving them the experience and the training so that vote can actually have more of an impact instead of them just, you know, picking random names. Even if our names are on the ballot, me and Cliff, if you guys got here a week ago, how do you decipher between us?
Question starting for Jahan. What specifically in your past experience gives you the confidence that you can bring your vision to LA into fruition? What specific tools will you utilize to ensure your success?
Network, one. Just, you know, being here for a long period of time, being able to network with a lot of the right people, finding out who those people are if I don't know them already. I think it's going to be a group effort to make some of the changes that we're after making, that we're trying to make. And I think as long as, you know, we're doing it collaboratively, it can be done. Got a lot of different programs that I'm working on. Some of them are innovative, and I don't know, we only have a minute, so I can't go too much into them. But I think some of the things that that I'm working on, like the District 8 Rewards Program, which incentivizes people to shop locally, working on some beautification projects and things of the sort. And I think all of those things will, help to bring my dream into fruition of making this a, better looking neighborhood and a neighborhood that's equitable to the long-term residents.
Cliff, what specifically in your past experience gives you the confidence that you can bring your vision for LA into fruition? What specific tools will you utilize to ensure your success?
I'm confident in the community. If we were organized, we're not outnumbered in our problems. We're just out organized. We're the many, and our enemies are the few. I'm confident that once we come together, solving our problems is going to be simple. But returning to the last question, be very careful who you try to disenfranchise, because the people that have the control and the authority and the power to say who votes and who doesn't and whose opinion matters and who doesn't, they're going to come after you next. We had a Voting Rights Act in this country that the Supreme Court, 3 members appointed by Trump, they just took away all of the rights to vote in Atlanta, in Georgia, all through the South, and they're coming for us next. Be very careful who you try to take power away from, because your power will be taken next.
Starting with Cliff, how does your trade serve the entire community and represent the working class?
I'm a member of the Skilled Trades, the Roofers Union. We're affiliated to the Building and Construction Trades Council. We put roofs on all of the schools in Los Angeles, all of the community buildings in Los Angeles. The point that Jahan made about developing trades among the youth, we provide free apprenticeship training, a 3.5-year program where you get paid while you work. You putting money into a retirement pension, medical benefits for your family. Our journeymen graduate after 3.5 years making $46 an hour. If you know anybody around these neighborhoods that's willing to get dirty hands and make clean money, please have them get in touch with us. There's a lot of construction work going on right now, and we're happy to provide jobs with training and a career in the skilled trades to anybody that's willing to bend their back.
Jahan, how does your trade serve the entire community and represent the working class?
Being a real estate broker, I've been licensed for 20 years this year. It's been a long time. It gives me an understanding of the financing aspect and what makes a neighborhood nice and valuable, things of the sort, how to improve those things. And I think that, and then also just interacting with people, negotiations, getting people to come together for a common goal and come to a common goal and a common point. So those are all things that I've had to experience just over the course of my career that I think will help.
Jahan, when do you think it'll be possible to get all candidates together in a forum like this, hopefully before the primary election?
Honestly, I don't. I think me and Cliff is probably the best as it's going to get as far as this open forum is concerned. There's one other candidate, Marquise. Obviously, the biggest knock on him, me and him both mentioned, is he's not accessible. Not only did he not accept, he didn't even respond to the invitation. So I'm just as, I can't get a response out of him either, so that's pretty much what we're faced against. And I have to thank Cliff for being open to coming in on what could be considered hostile territory and, just letting us hear him out and being able to let everybody hear both of the candidates out. So I do appreciate him for, taking the leap and coming out here. And I think this is probably the closest we're going to get to an open forum before the primary elections.
Cliff?
I appreciate Jahan and his team for extending the invitation, and the healthy exchange of ideas out in public is one of the things that can make our community stronger. And I think it's disgraceful that the council member would not come out into the open, that he does not do public town halls, he does not do question and answer programs to be held accountable to the community. But there's nothing that prevents us, collectively, whatever our disagreements are, from marching down into his field office and making him and his staff respond to us and answer our questions and deal with some of the problems that we're facing. And I'm happy to coordinate with anybody in this room that's willing to go and hold his feet to the fire.
Forgive me for this one. Cliff, Hyde Park community along Crenshaw Boulevard has been stripped of services and businesses, yet we are being bombarded with Destination Crenshaw art projects. How would you reclaim commercial space to promote economic growth that benefits the community and businesses?
Destination Crenshaw is the marquee accomplishment of this current council member. And what it's going to be is an artifact, an artistic rendition of a community and its struggles and contributions that is no longer here. It's going to represent a historic struggle of a people that have been pushed out. And so when they say Destination Crenshaw, they don't mean for the people that live in this community. When they say destination, what they're talking about is for people that come in on the airport, get on the people mover, and then hop on the new metro. The people that they sold the mall to are going to turn it into what they call the new Grove. You all know the Grove on the west side. Once they put that into King and Crenshaw, everything around it is going to be changed. All of those little coffee shops and theaters and poetry spots and music spots that we used to be able to go and spend time in Leimert Park and spend our dollars supporting these mom and pop shops, all of them that are left are going to be ran out. The only way that we're going to be able to protect the integrity of this community for the members of this community is to go to war with the for-profit private developers that are trying to take this over. And if we don't do that and we don't do it soon, they're going to clear all of this out.
Jahan? Hyde Park community along Crenshaw Boulevard has been stripped of services and businesses, yet we are being bombarded with Destination Crenshaw art project. How would you reclaim the commercial space to promote economic growth that benefits the community?
One, we have to reprioritize the businesses because not only the Destination Crenshaw, but even when they put the railway in the middle of the Crenshaw, a lot of those businesses were affected for a long period of time, which is why some of them are struggling and they're not viable now. So that focus needs to be put on them. Of course, also the financing that I want to go back to. And even as a real estate person, I have experience with construction and remodels. Cliff does as well. It's, the cost associated with fixing up some of these commercial buildings is why I keep leaning on the financing, right? Because either the owner who owns it now would have to fix the building, or the renter would have to come in and remodel something where the plumbing or the electrical may not have been done in 40 years. So who's going to absorb that cost, And right now, since we don't know who's going to absorb that cost, landlord or tenant, the tenants are not, no person is going to rent those knowing they have to do that much work to get it to where they need it, and the landlords are letting them stay like they are. So pressure needs to be put on the building owners to either fix those buildings up or sell them to somebody who's willing to, hopefully long-term community members, if the financing is there for them to be able to do those things.
I'll make this question 9 will probably be the last question, so you guys have closing remarks. Okay. The issue of racial conflict is major. The graph for power by Latino leaders is an example of this. How do you propose, particularly the black community, maintain its cultural integrity? Jahan?
I think we have to organize first, and be on one page ourselves. We are probably one of the least organized groups. We're out-organized, and we are not working on a common goal per se. And I think once that happens, and once we're able to reestablish some group activities or group cohesiveness, then we would be able to accomplish a lot more as far as that's concerned. And that includes the gang violence around here. Pretty much my whole life living here, I've never felt comfortable walking from one end of the district to the other, because how many hoods am I going to pass through? Would I have to deal with that? So we have to kind of end that war and that struggle amongst ourselves as far as the black community is concerned. And I think that's just more interaction, just the effort to have more interactions. So we know everybody, so we know each other, and it's not like you are dealing with a stranger or an op or whatever they call them. You know what I mean? There's somebody that's on the other side. We don't look at them like that. We look at them as brothers and somebody who's part of the same group as us.
Cliff, the issue of racial conflict is major. The grab for power by Latino leaders is an example of this. How do you propose, particularly the black community, maintain its cultural integrity?
Racial conflict is something that's put into our communities to make us fight against each other, to make white people fight against black people, or to make people that were born here fight against people that came from somewhere else, or to make somebody on this side of the street fight against somebody on that side of the street. I was born in Chicago, and I had the privilege for 5 days to breathe the same oxygen as Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton said that this is a class struggle, whether we want to face it or not. We're not going to fight fire with fire. We're going to fight fire with water. We're not going to fight racism with racism. We're going to fight racism with solidarity. We're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism like some of these punks in Chicago want to do. We're going to fight capitalism with socialism. And what Fred Hampton was saying is that there's no individual solution to a collective problem. Collective problems can only be solved with social solutions. What we have in common is much greater than anything that divides us, regardless of what kind of music we listen to or what God we worship or what kind of food we eat. We have to come together on the basis of what we have in common. And if that's nothing else, it's to fight and defeat our enemies.
Cool. Paul?
All right. Another round of applause for Cliff and Jahan. Now, before we close out, we're going to get closing statements for Cliff and Jahan, and we're going to start with Jahan.
In closing, I would say that we do have the power to change our neighborhood for the better, as long as we believe that we can. And hopefully I've not only convinced you guys that it can be done, but that I can help lead that change. I think as long as we are cohesive and working together, and that we stay connected and grounded, or I stay connected and grounded to the community, a lot of the things that we are trying to do, we can do with this campaign. And hopefully you guys believe that, and that you will vote for me March 5th.
Cliff?
We're living in a dangerous moment. The basic pretenses of democracy in this country are being threatened by fascists leading the Republican Party. First is that we must defeat Trump in a united front, and finally a political party for workers and oppressed people. The Democratic Party itself works for capitalism and the ruling class, and they're dragging us into wars and imperialist adventures against our own interests. As I said, 5 members of the city council now are either indicted or convicted. We haven't talked about reparations and self-determination as part of our program for people's democracy. Reparations must be a labor issue, and all workers must support compensation for unpaid labor. An injury to one is an injury to all, and this is what we mean by mutual self-defense. Amiri Baraka, in his poem, Why Is We Americans, said that reparations means 300 years of blue chip stock in the entire operation to be paid in a central bank the average worker farmer wage plus damages for all the killings and the frauds, the lynchings, the missing justice, the lies, the frame-ups, the unwarranted jailings, the character and race assassinations, historical slander, ugly caricatures for the land that was took, for all the rapes and the Rosewoods and the Black Wall Streets and the miseducation, jobs lost, the segregated shacks, the disease that killed them, and all the mad police that drilled them, and all of these are suits, specific litigation for reparations for damages paid to the Afro-American nation. So we're rolling the rock up the hill. America has never been a democracy, Du Bois said. I worked on the election campaign for Amiri Baraka's son, Raz Baraka, in Newark, New Jersey, when he ran for mayor from 1994 to 2014. Raz is now the mayor of Newark, the largest city in New Jersey. They just announced that Newark has reported a 57% decrease in the unsheltered homeless population in that city. But Amiri taught us that protesting is not a strategy. We have to fight for power. Raz's slogan in his campaign was "Believe in Newark." And I think that we can say believe in South Central and believe in District 8. And I would like to close, if I could, some words from the great poet Langston Hughes. He said, "Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man and woman is free, the land that is mine, the poor man, the indigenous, the black folks, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose, the steel of freedom does not stain from those who live like leeches on the people's lives. We must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." Rest in peace to Kwame Nkrumah. Unity and struggle in the city is going to change hands.
That concludes the debate. As far as me, I really enjoyed. Once again, thank you for having me here. It is nice to do something like this in the community. For those that don't know, I worked on KGLH, the front page, and this is the first time that I've ever seen somebody in the district actually hold a debate in the district. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm not going to pick a winner because everybody's views are different. I enjoy both of you. Cliff, Jahan, thank you for having me once again, and I appreciate you so much.
As we close out, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Give them one more round of applause, man. It was amazing. Round of applause for Cliff. Round of applause for Jahan. They did great. They did really, really great. You know, I want everybody to know, like, everyone being here today is want to be a part of change. You know, everyone that's here, it don't matter who's not here. It's about who's here. You know, yeah, years from now, it could be filled with hundreds of people, but this one will always be remembered. You know, Cliff and Jahan, they decided to come here today. It don't matter who's not here. I believe we have our next city council member here. I really do. You know, that's all that matters, who's here right now, you know. So thank everybody for coming out. Thank you, Bobo, for moderating today. He did an amazing job. Thank you, Lana, for setting everything up and inviting, you know, us Nothing to Some podcast out today. Another round of applause for Cliff. Another round of applause for Jahan. Soundman in the back who did his thing. Round of applause for him as well. And a round of applause for all of you who came today. All right. Thank you all, everybody. God bless and drive safe. All right. Thank you.
I just want to say in closing, thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you. We appreciate you guys. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you for Bobo for moderating. Thank you for Paul P. You guys check out Nothing to Something podcast. Thank you, Cliff, for agreeing to come. Thank you to my campaign manager, Lana, for setting all of this up and making it a possibility. And, you know, I can't thank you guys enough. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
You guys going to answer shake hands and kiss babies, or Cliff, Jahan, taking pictures, shaking hands, kissing babies? Cool.
Sorry, guys. Quick announcements. We will be doing voter registration this Sunday at Leimert Park. That's Sunday from 11 to 3 p.m. Also, please visit my website, jeps2024.com. That's jeps2024.com, and to have a lot of updated information on there. Thank you, guys.